We come into this world innocent and full of light. At some point, we find ourselves broken. This podcast explores the journey back to wholeness, back to yourself, and back to the light. My name is Gina, and this is The Healing Being. All right. Thanks, Brian, for joining me on the Healing Being podcast today. I don't really do introductions much, but we've known each other a while, and I feel like you have a lot to offer people when it comes to inner growth, coming into yourself, as I've kind of seen you do that over the years. I guess we'll just hop into it, and I'm curious what your definition of wholeness is and how it's changed over time.
The way it's changed over time is I've been through so much more difficulty, and life has been so driven off course by what I pictured when I was younger, that wholeness now is about an internal state that allows for all that stuff, kind of learns to appreciate all of that, and then sort of returns back to the things that I loved as a kid, or I loved when I was younger, not losing sight of all that, despite the way I've been worn out by shit, parenting, legal shit, and family dramas, and just all of it can kind of take you down a bunch of notches. So for me, wholeness is learning to love yourself, and despite those things, and not even despite, but acclimating those things, letting them change you a little bit, letting yourself be changed a little bit, I think is huge. Do
you think there's a time that maybe not pinpoint, but a time of your life when that shifted more than others? Like, did anything ever happen where you were like, oh, I kind of get it now? Like, was there something, or was it like a culmination of things?
It's a culmination. It's, you go through those things. I think, like a lot of things, you'll be stuck in a place, then all of a sudden something will break free. But it's not on and off. It's, kind of learn something, and then you'll kind of forget a little bit, and then you'll lose sight, and then something will remind you. But yeah, there's definitely some specific things, moments where I can remember larger chunks breaking off at once, where things got more clear, yeah. Mm-hmm. But it's not a clear shot, no.
I think that when people are in like states of suffering, or when they're in parts of their life that are really unhappy and they're struggling, those are the times when it's hard to see the other side, and it's hard to see a way out. So it's really ironic, because a lot of people that I talk to, it's always hindsight,
Yeah.
And it's easy to come on and talk about hindsight and say, well, it's easy, now I know.
Sure.
But when you were in those times, do you think there's anything that anybody could have said or done to help you understand there was something on the other side?
I think, well, first of all, I still feel like I'm in those times a lot, right? Like, there's still so much going on with my family, specifically right now, my son, getting him through school, the trauma we've been through the last couple of years, really related to his autism, and he went through 4 different high schools, and it was just a limp to get him through, kind of a thing, and a ton of personal shame and embarrassment and difficulty and judgment, self-judgment that went on through that. My whole point is just, I don't think that that's over. You act like I fixed something. I didn't. There's pieces that break off that I'm better at now. But it's not like that just went away.
Yeah.
What was your question besides that? That got stuck in my mind, because it feels like you approach the thing like I've gotten somewhere. Maybe I've gotten somewhere, but I'm not this, holy thing that no one is, I don't think.
Not that it's a whole thing, but it's interesting to me, because from this perspective, and maybe you don't see it this way, but the way you handle things is way different than how you used to. Do you think you can see that in yourself? Or do you feel like you're doing
Yeah, there's certain things that I have finally, it feels like finally I got certain lessons that were so confusing to me. Or just, for me, I can learn something. Once I've learned something, I can act on it quickly. But certain things were so just opposed to what I naturally thought and believed about the world that it was hard-earned shit for me to learn.
Yeah.
As far as that not everyone's good. Really digesting that some people, no matter how confident they seem and how aggressive they are, don't know shit. And they're telling you and judging you. And I just thought about this earlier today. I was journaling and writing about it. Being more self-doubting as a person doesn't mean that I don't know shit. it's kind of the opposite, you know? People that come in all like, this is how it is, this and that. That confuses my brain into thinking that they must know something. And that's been a hard lesson for me. You know, just other hard lessons that, but I can see things that I do differently for sure. I don't know I'm curious what you see, because I feel like you're seeing, maybe you're projecting, you're seeing things in me that it's been harder than that.
Maybe. I guess it feels like I guess we haven't talked as regularly, but you're definitely less like panicky about it. Whereas there used to be more worst case scenarios popping up.
Do you think so?
I think so.
Like even way back?
Back then there
Before
were
everything?
more worst case scenarios. Like the worst case scenarios seemed more real to you from my perspective, whereas now.
You mean prior to Brandon and all that stuff?
No, even since the kids. Yeah, I feel like maybe in the last 2 years or so, your ability to handle crises has like really improved.
I appreciate that. I don't know.
Maybe not.
Well, I mean, like I have these different states, you know.
Do you think that's self-doubt, though? Do you think that's you saying, I can't know this, maybe I don't...
Maybe it's, I don't see what other people see, you know?
Maybe you're doing better than you think you are, kind of thing?
I think so, but I also go in and out of, like, lows still, you know? I mean, I think that the thing is, like, if I had developed any of that, like, what I'd want it to be, or what I'm interpreting it as now, is not that those things don't happen, or that I don't totally fucking fall apart. It's kind of like how long I stay there. It's a little bit... Like, I've learned there's certain universals that I can hold on to. And maybe before I didn't feel that way. I definitely, like, 2015, 16 was much more shaken up.
Right.
In a continuous, regular thing. So there's definitely certain things I got now. Like, I have more of an openness about it. I don't hold as much in. But also, you know, even when shit hits the fan, and it does, and when I kind of lose my way, I just have this sort of knowing that I've been here, I'll be here again. And that also a big one is like, kind of who gives a shit, you know? Like I take it almost historically. Like, I am not missing out on anything. Like, and this is part of it. Like, I get to fucking experience all of it. Like, all the shit. So even when I'm super depressed, I feel like, good. Why shouldn't I be? Other people, when I think things are fucking falling apart, or I worry about running out of money, or I worry about this thing, I start just kind of have this thing of like, yeah, that sounds right. Like, that's fucking life, right? Like, it just feels more almost like joining the real experience of life, you know? Like, other people have always gone through this shit, so who gives a shit? I have more of that now, just not giving a shit, you know? Like, yeah, I feel like fucking shit right now, and this thing's horrible, I hate it, you know? But just this weird small voice, much quieter, but I'm trying to make him louder, that just doesn't fucking care, because it's just kind of boring now. I've been through this so much. And not in a bad way, in a really good way.
That's exactly what I was referring to. Exactly what I was referring to.
Was it?
Yeah. Because that's that, like, inner thing, you know, that underlying thing. Like, where I said you don't, like, not as crisis-y. Because when you get to the crisis point, you have that little voice that sounds like that says, well, why does it really matter anyway? And that's, to me, when I hear that, that's acceptance in what is.
Yeah.
And that's, when you just said something like experiencing all of it, and I feel like that's really the key to life.
I think I really look at that. You know, my favorite artists, writers, you know, movies, all this shit has a depth to it, and that depth includes a lot of these things that we're talking about. You can almost kind of put it into that context of, like, you know, almost like, well, I'm lucky to have seen that or whatever. Or when I think about, like I had, you know, my grandfather, he's my step-grandfather, died died in, I think, 2001. I was still pretty young, but I remember him super well. And he had just been through all this shit. But he had just this thing of just showing up all the time, you know, emotionally. He lost a son. He'd just been through several different transitions in the country that were probably hard. And we were born in 1910. He was way back, you know. And so I'm excited to, like, have been through the things I've been through, which are, I think, they're very uncommon, but they're also not. You know, they're very, like, they're not uncommon. And I'm excited to get through that and have almost like as a witness, like I witnessed it. You know, and that keeps me from killing myself sometimes. You know, like, because it's just like, nah, I would never do that. Like, I want to, like, see it all, even the shit I don't want to see. Doesn't mean I don't get super sad and depressed, you know. At times it happens, yeah.
Well, and those are moments that exist in the human experience. It's not like we can
part of it
get rid of those, And I notice sometimes in the spiritual community and even in like non-duality, there are people who try to still deny those parts of ourselves. And that's the thing about being in a spiritual community or whatever, is there's always going to be that sense of people trying to push away the human experience of it when it's really all
I find that super hard to deal with.
It's all part of it. And as I'm kind of coming back into my being of whatever happened, for me, it's just like I'm realizing that everything is all the same. And not like I knew it before. I knew it before. Well, kind of like the mind. So the mind creates all of these things. Like everything we've talked about is just coming from the mind, right? But there's this thing called like headless meditation and headless being. I don't know if you know what that is, but essentially it's like who are you? Your being without a head, without your thinking, seeing, talking, moving. You're an energy source, essentially. Like if you take away who you think you are, if you take away all your belief systems, you take away all that, and people get in those moments
just without the identity stuff,
without like the identity, without the belief, because all of that is just made up, and all of that changes constantly. So it's like I got into a place for a little while where that was just gone completely. It didn't arise. It just didn't come up. Like
what was gone? I'm sorry.
All the thoughts.
Yeah.
All of them. And you
through
remember
meditation or
no, just in daily life.
You
and you know
you're
how
able
I
to
was.
Put yourself
no,
there.
I don't have to do anything. It just went away. Like all of my thoughts, just gone. Like
what happened?
I don't know.
Bunch of drugs?
No, I didn't do any drugs. It was totally sober. I think.
What do you mean? So wait, you just walk
YouTube.
around now? I just want to understand this. You walk around now just not identifying as
no
Gina
inner voice.
and all this shit?
Yeah, I even changed my name on Facebook. Didn't you see that?
I did, yeah. I didn't know what that meant.
Because that's what that meant for me. I mean, now I'm coming back into like the human body of it, but it was like for probably 6 to 8 months, there was just no sense of self. It was just gone.
That's great. And it must have felt good, right?
It didn't feel like anything. It just felt like being. And that's I think another thing people
in a calm,
have.
nice way?
Yeah, just peaceful. Yeah. Just everything was just peaceful and fine. It's ironic because most people think when you become enlightened or when you have these big aha moments, it's just pure joy, pure happiness, pure bliss. But it's not at all. It's just calmness.
Peace,
it's just peace.
Yeah.
It's just peace and acceptance and everything. Not that things don't arise. Like you said, I still get depressed. I still get sad. Like there are still tears. I still get frustrated. But it just like it's a moment of being, and there's no attachment or resistance to that moment. So nothing lasts.
Just kind of floats
it's
by.
It's floaty, super. I mean, I experience it in this vessel, but then it's gone.
You don't attach to it, which is really good. I definitely attach to it still. I definitely And I remember stuff.
Yeah.
I'll remember to go back to that place. But my brain is just very clingy and analytical and holds on. And so I have to actively work at that. Like it's just part of my deal a little bit. I don't know. You
remember I used to be that way.
Well, I never know what's someone's internal world. I mean, we've definitely talked about all kinds of things.
Yeah.
I would imagine you still have issues and stuff that come up, right?
No.
Things that bug you? No?
No.
Just walking around like you had a lobotomy or something like that?
Yeah.
That's weird.
I actually thought for a minute, I was like, what happened to me? Did I just...
And nothing sparked this? What's going on?
Oh, no, I did a YouTube about it, but I don't think we've actually got to talk about it. But I went to LA for this thing called the Shift Experience, and it was a meditation retreat. When this thing happened, I wasn't meditating. I wasn't doing anything. I was standing out talking to some people. It was like towards the end of the event, and I was standing there. I guess I'll tell the story then. I was standing there, and I was talking to some people, and I was just standing there, and kind of out of nowhere... It felt like you've had deja vu, right?
Yeah, of course.
So it was like deja vu, but like times 1,000. And it was like everything, and it's gonna sound really wild, but like it was like out of a movie. Everything stopped, like time stopped, and I was like frozen in time, and I could see everybody. And then I had this overwhelming sense of like I wasn't there, like I was everything, and everything was me. And all of a sudden, I just felt this sense of like. It's so hard to describe because it was like everything and nothing and release, and it was like a flash. Everything just... It was like a black hole exploding and contracting in the space of where I was standing and encompassed
But
everything.
you just went down to this thing and you weren't even participating in it? You were just standing outside
No,
and
I was
it just
participating
happened?
in the events, right? But it was like, it was
But
a bunch of
you don't
different
sound
things.
like you credit the event with what
I
occurred.
don't know if I do, because I wasn't actively doing anything. I wasn't in a meditation and then it came to me like, no, I was just standing there. I wasn't even, I was engaged, but I wasn't doing anything. And so then after this thing happened, I just kind of like stood there for a minute and I was like, what the hell was that? And I was just kind of in shock and I had no idea what had happened, and I was really kind of turned around by it, and I just kind of like went, okay, that's interesting. And then since then, everything just started to like fall away little by little, just like poof, 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 like things like overthinking, fears, thoughts. It just kind of like, it was like someone came in and like squeegeed my brain, squeeged it all out. Any fears or ideas that I had about being broken or being whatever, they were just gone, like a light switch. Like I didn't even.
That's interesting because you don't really attribute this to your trip or to meditation even.
No, not at all. No, it was totally spontaneous.
Random?
Totally spontaneous. And that's the wild thing is, as this has happened, I've had people ask me, well, what'd you do? How'd you do this?
Right.
And I'm like, I didn't do anything. Like, it just appeared.
Something just switched in you.
It just appeared. I don't know what it was. And so it's like.
Well, yeah. I mean, I've definitely had those times where things
lasts.
just appear.
Yeah.
You know? I mean, I think it's eternal. I think it's inside you. I mean,
It
I
is.
really think so much that, you know, if we could revert back to being young, and there was a lot of this when you're a kid. Or at least your mind can kind of see things without having an identity and an attachment. I mean, that's what it is as a kid. You just walk around and everything's abstract and just out there, and you're super unaware of yourself. And so it has to still be in there. The ability to, like, be excited. But, you know, it doesn't sound like that's what you're describing. You're describing not having too much attachment to stuff, and I feel like I can see how that would happen. And I've had moments like that where I'm not actively conjuring up something, but it's never been what you're describing, where now forever I'm outside of giving a shit about stuff, forever, you know, overly attaching to stuff.
And I can't say that this will be like a forever thing. You know, there's no there's no thinking about it either. I've had experiences in the past that were spiritual or enlightening, and you think about them, and then you wonder and you assess and this and that. But when this happened, there was none of that. There was no sense of like needing to know anything or figuring anything out. Everything just felt like, oh. And it wasn't necessarily about me. It was about like everybody. And I think that's part of where this podcast came from, is I was like, whatever this being experienced in this wholeness, in this oneness, I also saw in those moments that it's everybody. I'm everybody, you're me, everybody. And it's like,
well, if you've done any drugs, like acid or whatever.
Do drugs and they get
well,
there,
no, I'm just saying, like, as a kid, I would
true.
do them, and that's, even early on, that becomes clear, like, and I think for me, like, in my better frame of mind, because it's up and down, so it's not always good, you know, but in my better state of being, wherever, or when I'm doing better maybe, or when I'm stepping back, I definitely can reconnect with that and feel that, because I definitely wholeheartedly believe that what's good for any bit of anyone is good for me, and that we are the same. But man, the waking life, you know, the traffic and the kids and the shit and the work and it pulls me out of that for sure. So I go in and out of that, and anytime I do kind of remember it, I kind of go back through this process of like, why don't I always behave that way, or why can't I always stay in that mind frame, you know?
And I think that's what people mean when they talk about the practice.
The practice of it.
That's just that's all it is.
Yeah.
And the more you practice it,
you catch it,
the easier it gets. The easier it gets for anything, and not just in this awareness presence thing, but anytime you're working on anything, any trauma, any behavior. Because I will say, and I've wondered this, like I've done, 15 years of inner work before this. Is it? Did I need to do that for this to happen? Is it part of it?
Maybe.
Who freaking knows? I don't have any idea. But if somebody was wondering, it's like, well, I did spend 15 years doing subconscious work and meditation and sound baths and the Vipassana and all that stuff. So I'll say it was spontaneous, but I'm like, was it related? Is that part of it? I don't know.
There's probably
there was a practice beforehand, but it was different. And the irony is now I feel like I don't need a practice because it's just inherent in being. And
I think that's the best way to have it be, you know? I mean, I think, like, I definitely work at stuff But the stuff that I work at is kind of inherent. Like I still need to work at these things. And there's some stuff that I'm struggling with. Meditation is something that I get so much out of, but I always struggle to come back to it. Mm-hmm. But there's other things like writing and journaling and creative things that I don't have to remind myself, or it's not a discipline. It's more of just a natural, almost like a muscle memory thing that I just have this internal world that I have, that helps me a lot. It's almost like being spiritual. I think that's kind of how it is. And so I've internalized that, and I think that making it a habit, making it part of the muscle memory, acclimating it just makes it's like a self-cleaning sort of thing. The writing is like a self-cleaning. It gets things out and it keeps it clean.
There's some teachers that say that creativity is like a direct link to God. So anything that's creative is in flow state. You know what that is, being in a flow state.
Yeah,
so
for sure.
That flow state is when you're most open. You're not thinking about it. You're not judging it. You're just being in it. And I know you've experienced that, like in your music, probably, where you're just in the flow of it. And that state is almost the most non-attached that you can be. I don't know if you've experienced.
Oh, for sure. I mean, different. Performing had that, which I don't do. I haven't done that in a long time. But there was moments where, and it's kind of like everything else. It's like not really all the time, and kind of hard to find sometimes. But when you're not trying and you're kind of a conduit. I mean, all these things kind of feel like, sounds so silly and cliche, but like if you really aren't actively pushing it, but letting something happen, that's wonderful. That feels like an exorcism or something like that. Like that's getting something out. But writing is the same thing. I love writing. But honestly, it's also just like, even in your work life and even in my just relationship with people and my, in and out of the ability to be expressive like that, feels similar to the other stuff, just how you show up.
Well, and it's all connected because it all goes up to the mind and like how we perceive ourselves. And in everything in life, everything's a mirror for each other. Yeah. We're all, you had said you'd seen it, and like we're all reflecting each other. We're all being in this. And when you said letting go and just allowing, I feel like that's that state that this being entered of just allowing, right?
Yeah.
So it's like no resistance or attachment. I'm curious, what areas do you feel like you're still resisting or attaching, if you're open to share?
I don't think there's anything new. All the things that cause me fear or resistance or attachment are all still there. They just happen less. Well, and I guess it's not across the board. Some things are more, more extreme or, less attached than others, I guess you'd say it. But I have all the same fears. Like, fears of my kids. Yeah. How things are going to be for them. How my son's going to do in the world with his issues that he has. Financial fears will creep in sometimes. I'll go through periods where work is slow. I mean, I go through the normal shit. Like, it's not like I'm just done with this stuff. I don't really buy that stuff, to be honest. Like, I don't honestly like being around people all the time that do that, because it feels either performative or momentary. Yeah. Like I'll have seasons where I'm in a Zen place. But, people that saunter up and I just trust the universe. Like, I don't always buy that fully. I'm not trying to get there. I'm trying to be real. Yeah. My effort is to be more
human.
Just more, off the cuff and real. Like, that's my creative expression. Yeah. Is not to be presenting something, but to be more vulnerable with that stuff, So I'll go through periods where I feel, I've been dating this girl, I'll get anxious about it sometimes. And instead of being all zen, like, in other words, I'll get back to being zen and comfortable by expressing it.
Of course. Yeah.
Like that to me is more real. Is, this thing came up, or this thing, I've got this buddy and he just, I don't know if he's always just in this perfect state, but he just presents this stuff like, oh yeah, life throws curveballs, but I know the earth is, it just feels very like disconnected and bullshit, kind of. It feels like he's presenting something, So, like, my thing is that I don't aim to be zen or holy. I aim to be authentic and real. Yeah. And then with that, things very slowly fall away. I feel less, like I was talking about the anxiety around this girl I'm seeing. that would have hit me maybe 5 times harder a few years ago. Mm-hmm. That's the thing. Not that it went away, but that I'm more real about it. I don't hold it in. It gets out. It goes away.
Yeah.
So a lot of things like that. I still have the same stuff. You know, I'm trying to think what else there is. I get focused on. I'm pretty vain, like my looks and shit. You know, and I'll go through periods where that's definitely fallen away a lot.
Yeah.
Kind of like examining why that is that way, or what it means to me that I would care about that as I get older. But definitely not acting like, oh, that doesn't. No, fuck that. Like, I want to be more real. You know, like that's all I want to be.
Yeah.
It's just more, you know, like I think I can look back and I can see ways in which I thought being nice all the time or giving someone attention all the time was just inherently good thing to do, and I don't agree with that now. That was a hard lesson.
Yeah.
Is not giving everyone fucking time.
Yeah.
And not listening to people.
Yeah.
You know, I listened too much to people back then, and it got in my head, and I listen to myself a lot more now. You know, so when something feels bullshitty, or something feels, even if I'm wrong, you know, just the ability to like not dive into somebody else's perspective is a big thing for me.
Trusting yourself. Trusting
myself and taking other people with a more maybe nuanced, but maybe also more honest assessment that, like I said at the beginning, like just because they present a certain way, don't be so affected by that. I used to be very affected by that.
Because you don't know what's going on in their mind or their heart or their body.
And what skills they've learned to cover up their shit. And what trip they're on and what they're fucking, you know. And I guess it goes hand in hand with not taking things very personally, you know. Like, I don't tend to, I'm slowly working my way towards having more compassion for people that have fucked me over a lot, you know. That I guess feeling like the anger and the resentment I have is mine, not theirs. Like, like owning it. But also not thinking that there's so much thought behind it, that they did this and that. They're just blind about shit, and they're just, you know, like...
Or we don't know what's in their mind. We can tell ourselves whatever we want, but we have no idea what
we don't know, and not getting into the business of it. Like, trying to diagnose them and, you know, act like I know, you know? Yeah.
Like you said, not taking things personally.
Yeah.
Especially, you know, with my daughter. You know, she's 3.5 and she's going through lots and lots of growth and phases and stuff. And she'll say things to me and it's like...
Yeah.
And you can't take a 3-year-old personally, you know?
No, but at the same time, it's great if you can do that with a 3-year-old, you know? Because actually 3-year-olds through 10-year-olds, whatever, or even older, people you love will know how to do that. A little bit. I had to, you know, I've turned a leaf, I think, with my daughter with that, where she's just very, very smart, very quick, very opinionated. Certainly has learned the social value of being able to pinpoint, you know, just you know. And so and that's subsided. Like, I don't feel really. It's not entirely true. There was something recently. Oh yeah, she like gave me shit. What the fuck happened? I wear this hat. I mean, sometimes and. I stopped wearing it for about 2 years, and then I put it on to go jogging, and then I wore it later that day. And she said something like, "Dad, why do you always wear that hat?" And it was meant to be
a poke.
And it got me, like, but it got me. And also, like, I don't give a shit. Like, it got me, like, because I was annoyed, and because I hadn't worn it in so long, and I just picked it up after like 2 years, maybe, and also because it still can get me, you know, like, I don't know why.
That's so funny.
In that moment, you know, but it did. Yeah, it's like fucking annoyed me. It's like Zoe, you know, she has a thing like she kind of likes to, I don't know, flex herself a little bit like that, see if she can get you, you know.
Yeah.
But that's one. So that's a good example. That happened once a couple weeks ago. It used to be she knew how to push all my buttons, and there's still some that still comes up, but it's just a lot less. That's why when you ask me like what stuff, no, none of it. Like, I've just lessened all of it, I guess.
Yeah. So I think that. Even full circle back to what I was saying in the beginning, saying that you handle things differently. It's funny because at first you're like, I don't really see it. And now the last 30 minutes, you've been telling me about how it's different.
Yeah. I mean, I guess I wonder how other people would see it. Because I don't feel like I broadcast that much of it.
I think it's the way you carry yourself and how you talk about things. So it's not necessarily about broadcasting. You know, obviously you're not posting on social media about things that are going on. And I know we only talk like here and there, but in those times, it's been easier to tell. There's less of a
also, you know, honestly, like, and this is like not to disagree or anything, but there's very like factual things that have changed, right?
Oh, that's true.
Like there's very
outwardly things
on the ground things.
Yeah.
I was caught up in court with my son's mom for 15 years. That shit was
that'll
making
bring you
me
down.
crazy.
Yeah.
And that's just out of my life now. So it's like I don't want to like undermine the work I've done. I'm not here to do that, but it's both, you know? Like I really feel people love to do this. You know, I guess part of my anger is enlightenment community or whatever, is this sense of like how it should be or whatever. Or, you know, like I do tend to think, and anger towards people that have judged me in the past is like, well, there's truth to what you're saying about perspective, inner work, and also there's also a lot of truth to the fucking facts and how they're affecting things.
Sure.
You know, and people that think they can't be broken by shit are fucking lying. Or they're just dumb or whatever.
Yeah.
I don't have a lot of respect for that. Like, I'd much rather be in a place of gratitude that these things aren't going on, or an appreciation, or just a place of questioning. I wonder how I would do with those circumstances. And not that my shit was like life or death, you know, but it certainly had this aggregate compounding effect that I kept trying to work on. And then the answer was that I had to fucking get out from underneath it, which I literally couldn't do. Yeah. Because I was in this situation where I was raising a kid with somebody, you know, that's that example. And so I think in that situation, it's about accepting. And like when I look back at those years, it's about like actually accepting that this was going to go on and fucking suck, that people wouldn't get it, and that it would be triggering. Yeah. And that there wasn't some put a smile on it kind of thing, you know, like people wanted there to be. Yeah. And that it was really, honestly, fucking, I regret talking about it to a lot of people because
the judgment.
No, just that invalidation of it. That it should go this way or it should go that way. Or how about you just do this and that? It's like I shouldn't, you know. So I think that people should just be more open and grateful when they're not going through it. But don't act like, well, I'm in this place, so I can tell you if you just would kind of do this. Nah. Or I wouldn't get attached to it because I'm just in this. I find that to be super immature. Yeah.
I think that using the word should in any context is not using that word, I think has changed a lot for me. Yeah. Because the minute that word comes up, should, whether it's directed at myself or something else or in a thought, it's instant. It's an instant inner knowing of what's going on inside yourself. Because if you're using the word should, there's either some sort of guilt, some sort of judgment, some sort of whatever. And that does come up too, you know, where I'll see, especially when I'm with MZ and I'm like out doing things. I see other parents. I see a parent do something and my mind goes, oh, they should do this. I go, Gina, hold up. You're judging them. You don't know them. You don't know their situation. Yeah. Like, we're all human beings. Like, it's all good. And then, but I have that internal dialogue, and then and then I go, okay, and then I kind of let it go.
See, for me, what I have in that, like, this is probably where I'm different, or where, like, what I'm experiencing even now quite a bit is I see other parents doing things, and I think, oh, I'm supposed to be like that, or I should be doing, you know, I have parental shame, parental guilt, like, God, I should have given my kids that, or I should be doing this, or we should take more of those trips, or we should do this thing. Hard. Yeah, it's fucked up.
We do it both ways, right? So if I see a parent and go, I should do that, then you can ask yourself, well, where does that come from? And that's my insecurities. And I'm on my own path, and I have my own stuff going on, and we're all just doing the best we can with what we have when we have it. And like you said, the factual things we can't.
And that's what I'm saying is, like, I've started to just say, fuck that. In my family, my older sister is this type A, put together, everything is by the book, and keeps it very on paper perfect. I don't think emotionally there's not a lot of integrity behind all of it, for sure, on an emotional level. But she does all those things. All of the things. I mean, and then some, plus some. I don't know. You know, I think, personality is one that likes control and likes to, for sure. But I'm saying, like, for me, the big, I guess, if there's like a corner that's been turned, is remembering that while she'll go around judging me, and my family has, you know, certain parts have all this stuff, they haven't been through any of this shit. They wouldn't know how it would break them. They like to pretend like they would. Oh, yeah. And that the fucking specifics are things that they can't fathom, and they actually know a lot less than me because of that. They've, you know, she's had this dual income, you know, her husband makes all the money, and he's as on board. I had a situation where I had somebody turning all this shit against me, a child with special needs, like, for them to carry themselves like they are more in the right and they're doing the right thing is a matter of them being ignorant and not me. And that's where I've it's like looking at people that shit used to affect me differently. I used to turn it around like, well, fuck, I need to be doing that. They don't get it. Yeah. And that's their problem, not mine.
Sure.
And they're truly less in the know. They've experienced less because they haven't had these challenges. They like to make believe that it's different, and they'll figure it out one day, or they won't.
Yeah, and I think the fullness of experience of being here includes all the stuff that you've gone through and I've gone through and all that. And it's weird. I was talking to someone else the other day and asking them, and maybe I'll ask you this too, like, do you think that if you hadn't been through the things you've been through, you would reach the same point of this mindset of like being an experience and stuff? Cause
no, I truly don't. Where my brain goes, if I hadn't been through what I've been through, then I'd have been going through something else, and I'd have gotten some other thing, or maybe it would have been something that also did this.
Yeah.
But if you just take this out,
you could be like your sister.
No, I wouldn't be like my sister. We have, which we were always, that's kind of the point, is that I was sort of set up for certain things. Because my sense of, like, what's important to me, my value system is very different than hers. Like, that's, I've gotten more clear on that stuff. Is that it's not about, they kind of feed each other. On one hand, I think what opened me up to all this shit that I went through was by being somebody that wanted a life that was contemplative and artful and interesting versus a straight thing up. I think her straight thing up has actually protected her quite a bit,
Sure.
To her credit, I guess, in a certain way.
Maybe.
But our value systems are just truly different. I still don't have this desire to go straight up where she's at. I don't look to her or anyone that's like that and say, God, I wish I could have that life. That never occurs to me, which I think would truly confound them. I don't think they can fathom that I'm not trying to get closer to that, or whatever.
I feel like that's also goes back to sense of identity and how people define themselves. And defining yourself by material, cultural conditioning is a way to live, but it's very rooted in the material world of the human life. Yeah. Not a spiritual one necessarily. Because it's very comparative.
Yeah.
And from this perspective, in the spiritual world, we're all equal. There's nobody's doing better, doing less. We're all just experiencing things.
Yeah, which is interesting to me because a lot of people describe that stuff as like my mother. She describes when someone has certain blind spots. She'll describe them as like kind of a little less evolved, or not in this lifetime. She'll say, well, are they going to get certain things? She's very spiritual. Yeah. I don't know. I kind of think that there are. I don't think one's maybe not a value system, but I definitely think I've met people that are less evolved. For sure.
I think that's
you don't think so?
Well, we say less evolved, more evolved. I think they're just on a different perspective. They're just in a different perspective because they could have perspectives that are helpful to you or me, even though we see them as quote unquote less evolved or lower vibe or whatever. It's like those things happen, I think, so that
like when you see a guy that's
everything.
like a hardened criminal and he's violent and he's geared towards doesn't have any appreciation for anything intellectual and just wants to do that, and I get that he comes from something that probably instilled that in him. But do you see someone like that as less involved? No, I think in my mind I see that as less evolved.
I don't see that as less evolved.
Yeah.
I see that as a product of cultural conditioning, and I see that as a spirit trapped in a body.
Yeah.
That doesn't know. And so when I think of that,
or see that,
the spirit is
fully separate from
right.
the
I
circumstances.
see that as the human being so fully identified in that. They don't even know that they're God and that they are everything and that they are all things and that they are just as worthy and just as,
which
as
I guess in my
else.
mind I see as less evolved, but
it's just an awareness.
Yeah.
Because that awareness could come to them at any point.
Yeah.
I mean, and if it does, it does, and if it doesn't, it doesn't. They're still having the experience either way.
Right.
Whether you're aware of it or not.
Right.
So when I had this awareness thing, I realized that everybody is it. Even if they don't see it. So now I see everyone like that. So no matter where they're at.
Yeah, which I think is...
I
think I've resonated with that before. I probably haven't put it that way.
Yeah.
And I do think I believe that, know?
It's hard,
but I go through things where I'm like, man, this person has got... They're so far away from healthy or transcending anything. But I guess it's, I guess it's almost like a philosophical thing. Like, is the spirit those things? I don't know.
There's a forgiveness.
I don't know what that means, honestly. I don't like spirit. I don't know what that means.
There's a forgiveness prayer called the Hawaiian families used to do for like centuries or whatever, called a Ho'oponopono, and it's for basically healing generations and generational trauma and issues and stuff, and healing yourself and healing others. And I learned it at that retreat actually, and it's just 4 lines that you say either out loud or to yourself. It could be directed at somebody or not, and it's I'm sorry, please forgive me, thank you, I love you, and you just repeat it over and over and over.
When you feel sorry to somebody? Or
when you see someone suffering in any way, shape, or form. So I will, when I see that, or if I feel a judgment, I'll start praying for them. And Christians or whatever, maybe they say their own type of prayer, right? But it's like you're praying that.
I mean, that feels very personal. It feels like you don't have to do it at all. You could be just feeling it or thinking it or whatever. I mean, I think traditions and things like that are very valuable, but I also don't get overly attached as like, I need to pray, or I need to, you can have that intention. And,
that's what I meant
or you can not, I don't know. I think a lot of those things are for the person doing it. Yeah. Which is fine. I think it's good.
Yeah. There is a sense of like wanting to help other beings sense their own divineness, and I think that's kind of what this is about. And even any connections I make from here on out, they all seem to be kind of rooted in that. But there's not a sense of, but I don't like have to do it, like it's there, but I'm like motivated, at the moment right now. So it's just like, I don't know what that's going to look like, but
I had whole phases where like, especially when I was younger and feels like when I had a less impacted life, which I think is just another way of saying like a lot of people when they get older, they lose their light a little bit. I don't want to think of myself that way, but certainly when I was younger, I was able to spend much more time in this reflective, meditative space, in and out, creative space as well, less impacted by immediate stressors or things. And I was able to hold that thing a little bit closer to myself of just seeing everyone in their best light.
Yeah.
Really being able, it was just and it feels good to you.
Yeah.
And I still believe that, but it definitely feel like I'm doing the work of like kind of remembering that and sort of like letting go of stuff.
There's another teacher I really like. His name is Bentinho Massaro. I think I said his name right. And he has a practice where he says for 2 to 4 seconds, a couple times an hour, a couple times a day, whatever, you just kind of sit in your being, right? Not in yourself, but in the awareness of all that is, right? And just like knowing that you're everything. And so it doesn't take sitting down and meditating for 20 minutes or whatever. It's like at any moment, like you're overwhelmed and you're at a delivery, just like stop for 2 seconds and just be like, all right, I am not this person. I am not this being. I am this divine whatever. And you just like kind of do that, like you said, holding on to it. It becomes easier and it lasts longer the more you do it. Just like working out, or a muscle or anything.
Sure.
It gets easier and lasts longer, and you can do 100 push-ups instead of 2.
Fully believe that. Yeah, exactly. Well, just I think the muscle memory of this stuff. I think that's where I'm trying to get again, when I was younger, I would meditate a lot. I had a really good run around the time Brandon was born. When I broke up with his mom, I had this roommate, and she was gone all the time, and I just had this house to myself. He wasn't staying with me that much. I just had this kind of clearing in my life a little bit where I would get up every morning and meditate. Yeah. And I definitely developed a thing where I could be at work. I was waiting tables. I could be in the thick of like some massive rush, what would be a lot of panic and things falling apart around me, and could still just reconnect with this really eternal kind of quiet that was around, that exists.
Yeah.
And that was like a muscle. Back then I could kind of just summons that a little bit or just remember. I still can, but it was much more on the surface. I was able to do it. And I was thinking about it. I was remembering to do it a lot more.
That's pretty cool. Well, I am so glad that you took some time to chat with me today. I know we haven't gotten to catch up in a while.
Yeah.
I'm curious if you have any maybe last words for anybody on their life experience stuff. I feel like all of this was awesome. So I feel like I don't even know if there's anything left to say.
No, nothing comes to mind. I feel good. Last words? No, I don't think so. That'll feel like a speech or something like that. I don't have any last words. No.
Cool.
I enjoyed it. Thanks for having me over. Appreciate
No problem.
it. Yeah.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Bye.
Bye.